All right, let's dive in. Today, we're going deep into JFK conspiracy territory. We're going to be talking about the assassination, the connections, the unanswered questions. And we're going to be looking at a couple of articles from the Third Decade Journal.
These articles are really interesting. They focus on people who were pretty much ignored by the official investigation.
Oh, okay, so like figures that might actually challenge the accepted narrative.
Exactly.
Interesting. So let's start with Jerry O. Rose's article, Nut Country 2, Whatever Happened to Elsa Silbernagle. This one, it kind of drops us right into a web of intrigue, starting with General Edwin Walker, a controversial right-wing figure, holding some mysterious meetings in New Orleans, like just days before the assassination.
Yeah, and these meetings, they weren't just any meeting. They were held in the office of Leander Perez, and he was a powerful, notorious segregationist. So, that detail alone just adds a layer of suspicion.
Yeah, for sure. Adds fuel to the conspiracy fire. And it gets even more intriguing. There's a document from the Louisiana State Police that mentions an unnamed participant at these meetings who is like, quote unquote, especially present, but their name is totally blacked out. So the question is, why the secrecy? Who are they protecting?
Right. Makes you wonder. And to make things even more interesting, the article connects Walker to Dallas. New Orleans was also the base for Guy Bannister, former FBI agent with, ties to extremists. And he may have been connected to Oswald's activities there.
Bannister. I mean, his name is always popping up in JFK conspiracy theories. It's like he's this thread connecting all these shadowy figures.
Yeah, exactly. And then another group comes into the picture, a CUSA. Conservative USA, a right-wing organization with ties to both Dallas and that infamous Welcome Mr. Kennedy ad.
Ugh, that ad is so chilling.
Two CUSA members, Bernard Weissman and William Burley, they become central to this article's mystery. They arrive in Dallas under unusual circumstances, and they're connected to this mysterious German woman, Elsa Silbernagle.
Elsa Silbernagle. Okay, another intriguing piece of the puzzle here. The article presents of these conflicting accounts about her relationship with Burley, what happened to her after the assassination. It's almost like she vanished.
Yeah, her involvement or lack thereof is totally shrouded in secrecy. And there's this curious parallel. Another German woman, also named Elsa Hacker, connected to Jack Ruby's friend Lawrence Myers. So two Elsas, both German, appearing in Dallas right before the assassination.
Okay, it's too weird. It's too much of a coincidence. And speaking of strange, the article mentions that Weissman and Burley were driving a car with stolen license plates. Like, why?
And even more puzzling, the Secret Service, they didn't seem to investigate those stolen plates. It really makes you question, the thoroughness of their investigation.
Or like, were they deliberately looking the other way?
It's possible.
Then there's this cryptic message. Weissman gets it on November 22nd from a Larry Jones, who was later identified as a CSA associate using an alias. And Weissman, reportedly panicked after he read it. So what was in that message?
We may never know. What really stands out to you about this whole Walker-CUSA connection?
Honestly, the lack of investigation?
Yeah.
By the Warren Commission and law enforcement, with all these red flags, they were deliberately avoiding that rabbit hole.
Yeah, that's definitely a key takeaway. Now let's shift gears a bit and dive into Sheldon Inkel's article, Other Patsies. This one explores the idea of alternative suspects, people who could have been framed if Oswald hadn't, fulfilled his supposed role.
Like backup assassins.
Yeah.
Or scapegoats to create confusion.
The article suggests both are possible. The first potential patsy it introduces is Donald Wainhouse. Arrested in Fort Worth right after the assassination based on a witness description. His alibi wasn't very strong, and his trip to Dallas that day was super suspicious.
Wait, so someone who matched the description of the assassin was arrested right after the shooting, and they had a flimsy alibi. That seems like a huge deal.
You would think so. The article also mentions a possible connection to George Hunsaker. The friend house claimed to be visiting.
So were they both being set up? Was there something more to their Dallas trip than we know?
The article doesn't say for sure, but it definitely raises those questions. Then you have Buell Wesley Frazier, Oswald's co-worker and neighbor, the one who drove him to work the morning of the assassination.
Oh, right, Frazier. He's the one who claimed he saw Oswald carrying that long wrapped package, right?
Exactly. But here's something that's often overlooked. The police took a .303 British rifle that belonged to Frazier, and later, some officers actually left that detail out when they were talking about Frazier with researchers.
Huh. Why would they leave that out? Seems like a pretty important detail.
It does, doesn't it? It raises questions about what they might have been trying to hide. Frazier was put under a lot of scrutiny, including a late-night polygraph. He was definitely on their radar.
Do you think maybe, because he was so close to Oswald and he made those incriminating statements about him, that maybe that shielded him from more suspicion? Like maybe he knew too much and they needed him on their side.
That's an interesting theory. The article also introduces us to Joe R. Molina. He was the TSBD credit manager and a member of the American GI Forum, which was a veterans organization considered, quote, subversive by the Dallas police.
Wait, a veterans group? Subversive? What was going on in Dallas back then?
The political climate was really intense, a lot of suspicion and fear around anything seen as anti-American. So Molina's home was raided, and he was questioned for hours, even though he was never officially arrested or charged.
So, like, he harassed and intimidated because of his association with this group.
Seems that way. And to make it even more suspicious, the police gave the media misleading information about Molina, which just fueled public suspicion against him.
It's like they were trying to paint him as a potential assassin, even though they had nothing on him.
Yeah, and the timing is also really interesting. The police were still searching for another suspect at the TSBD, even after Oswald and House were arrested.
What were they looking for? Another rifle? Another shooter?
The article suggests that's a possibility. You know, there's that initial confusion about the type of rifle that was used. Early reports got it wrong, so some people thought maybe there was another weapon at the scene.
So was that deliberate misinformation or just genuine confusion? Was someone trying to muddy the waters?
It's hard to say for sure, but the possibility of planted evidence, you know, to solidify Oswald's guilt after these other patsies were no longer needed, it's definitely a disturbing thought.
It's like they had this network of potential scapegoats ready to go.
Yeah.
And Oswald just happened to be the one they used.
The article even brings up the possibility that House, Frazier, and Molina were deliberately impersonated to further confuse the investigation.
Whoa, okay, now we're talking about a whole other level of conspiracy. The planning and coordination that would take. It's mind-boggling.
It's a lot to take in, for sure.
Okay, this is getting intense. We've got one more article to go through before we wrap up this deep dive. Michael Westberg's 3 cartridge cases, Chain of Possession, which focuses on those spent cartridge cases found on the 6th floor of the TSBD.
Yeah, the chain of custody for evidence is crucial in any investigation, especially one of this magnitude. You need to be able to prove that the evidence hasn't been tampered with.
Absolutely. And this article really dissects all the inconsistencies and contradictions in the testimonies of the officers who collected and handled those cartridge cases.
There are conflicting accounts of who handled the shells first, how they were marked, even when and where those markings were made.
Sounds like a mess.
The journey of the envelope containing those shells is also pretty strange. Multiple transfers, lack of proper sealing. It all raises concerns about potential tampering.
So even the handling of this crucial evidence is suspect.
It seems that way. And then there's that one shell, CE-543, which had a dent. A dent that could have prevented it from being fired.
A dented shell.
Yeah.
How did that get past experienced investigators?
Nobody seems to have noticed it or questioned it. It's very strange.
Was it planted? Was it a deliberate attempt to confuse the investigation?
The article doesn't say for sure, but it highlights all these inconsistencies. And the lack of follow-up by the Warren Commission.
It's like every layer we peel back reveals another layer of mystery. The mishandling of this evidence just casts so much doubt on the official narrative.
It definitely raises more questions than it answers.
It's mind-blowing, like these little details, when you really look at them, they just cast so much doubt on the whole official story.
It's fascinating, isn't it? These articles, by focusing on these less-known figures and the problems with the evidence, they really make us rethink what we think we know about the assassination.
It's like we've been looking at the wrong puzzle, or like a puzzle with missing pieces. And these articles, they give us new pieces, and suddenly the picture looks completely different.
Yeah, they highlight the importance of context and perspective. You can't just focus on Oswald. We have to look at the bigger picture, consider other explanations, be open to the idea that the truth is way more complicated than we want to believe.
You know, one thing that really struck me was this whole idea of other patsies. It's chilling to think there might have been other people ready to take the fall if Oswald hadn't been there. It makes you wonder about the level of planning, the coordination involved.
And if there were other people being considered as assassins, what did that say about Oswald's guilt? Was he really the only one, or was he just the most convenient scapegoat?
It's like a hall of mirrors. You know, every time you think you're getting close to the truth, there's another reflection, distorting everything, making you question everything you thought you knew.
And then you have the inconsistencies with the evidence, especially those cartridge cases. They really undermine our confidence in the official narrative.
Conflicting testimonies, the chain of custody problems, the dented shell, it all points to, like, sloppiness at best, and at worst, deliberate tampering.
Yeah, it's hard to believe in such a high-profile case that there could be so many problems with the evidence. It makes you wonder, what were they hiding? Who were they trying to protect?
It's like these articles, they don't give us all the answers, but they raise so many important questions that deserve further investigation. They force us to consider the possibility that the truth is way more disturbing than we imagine.
Absolutely.
You know, one thing I found really disturbing was how the police treated Joe Armelina, raiding his home, the interrogation, leaking false information to the media, all because he was a member of a veterans group they didn't like. It just seems so wrong.
It definitely raises concerns about abuse of power and targeting people based on their political beliefs.
Yeah, how many other innocent people might have been caught up in this?
It's a stark reminder that the search for truth can be affected by agendas, by biases. We have to be careful, examine all sides, consider everyone's motivation. And that's why it's so important to keep exploring these other narratives, to keep asking questions, challenging the accepted truth. The JFK assassination is a wound that hasn't healed. And these articles, by looking at these lesser-known aspects, they help us understand just how deep and complex that wound really is.
Yeah, they force us to face the fact that history isn't always neat and tidy. The search for truth can be messy, uncertain.
It's like peeling an onion. Every layer you remove, there are more questions, more complexity.
And sometimes more tears.
But even if we never find all the answers, the process of searching, questioning, exploring, it's essential. It helps us learn from the past, understand the present, and shape a better future.
So for someone who wants to really dig into the JFK assassination, what does all this mean for them?
It means we can't just rely on the official story. We have to go deeper, look at other sources, be willing to challenge what we think we know. The articles we've talked about today are just the beginning, a gateway into a whole world of JFK research.
Okay, so with that in mind, let's step back from the details of the investigation for a minute and consider the bigger implications of these other narratives. It's crazy how much we rely on, people in power to tell us what happened. But what if they're not telling the whole story? Or even, like, deliberately hiding parts of it?
That's a big question, not just about JFK, but about any historical event. We gotta remember, history is often written by the winners, or at least by the people with the most influence. It's up to us to dig deeper, question the official story, look for other perspectives.
Yeah, thinking about these other patsies, like Donald Wayne House, picked up right after the assassination with a shaky alibi. If Oswald hadn't been there, would House have been the fall guy?
It's possible, and the fact that his arrest was based on, a witness description, which could have been wrong, it shows you how unreliable eyewitness testimony can be. Even in cases that seem really clear-cut, there's always room for doubt.
And then there's Buell Wesley Frazier, the guy who drove Oswald to work. They took a .303 British rifle from him, but then that detail just gets kind of swept under the rug. It's like they were trying to protect him, maybe because his testimony was so important for their case against Oswald.
Or maybe they were worried that, if they looked into Frazier more, it might lead them somewhere they didn't want to go, maybe implicate other people, or uncover a bigger conspiracy.
And then there's Joe Armelina, the guy from the TSPD. His only crime was being part of a veterans group the police didn't like. They raid his home, interrogate him, leak all this false information to the media, making him look like a suspect. It's just scary how easily an innocent person can become a target, especially in a climate of fear and paranoia.
Yeah, it reminds us that we can't take anything for granted. We have to think critically, and we have to stand up for people who are being treated unfairly.
This whole deep dive has been like a real eye-opener.
Yeah.
It makes you realize how much we just accept what we're told.
It's easy to get stuck in the familiar story, the one that's been repeated so many times. It becomes part of our collective memory. But these articles, they make us step outside of that. Question what we think we know, and accept that history can be messy and uncertain.
It's like we've been looking at a flat image of the assassination, and now we're seeing it in 3D, with all the layers and the contradictions.
And the more we look, the more we realize how much we don't know. But that's what's so great about history. It's a constant journey of discovery. Every new piece of information, every new perspective gets us closer to the truth.
So for our listeners, why should they care about all this? These obscure details, these alternative theories, why does it matter?
Because the JFK assassination wasn't just some event in the past. It changed America. It was a loss of innocence, a loss of trust. It led us into this world where conspiracy theories run wild. By understanding what happened, questioning the official story, looking at different perspectives, we can learn from it, become better citizens, and be more prepared for the challenges we face today.
We've talked about the people who might have been framed. But it makes you wonder, did any of these patsies believe they were actually involved? Were they manipulated? Like unknowingly playing a part in something bigger?
That's a really interesting thought. Could someone be tricked into thinking they were part of a plot? Maybe through fake information or psychological manipulation? Even if they weren't the one who actually did it. It adds another layer to this whole idea of conspiracy. The idea that people can be pawns in a game they don't even understand.
It's a pretty unsettling thought. Something to think about.
Definitely. Well, I think that's about all the time we have for today. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah. Thanks for listening, everyone. We hope this deep dive has, sparked your curiosity and made you question everything, especially the stories we've been told.
Remember, the search for truth never ends. The more we learn, the more we realize how much we don't know. But that's okay. Embrace the mystery, keep asking questions, and never stop searching for answers.